Good morning. I am Steve Weber. I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show, and welcome. Being broadcast here on Spirituality Gone Wild and also on the American Gumption YouTube and Facebook pages. So if you are not following, please do so on either Spirituality Gone Wild, or I should say, on Spirituality Gone Wild, and on either of the American Gumption Morning Show pages on Facebook, or on the YouTube channel. Alrighty, so today we're going to have a guest, Danielle Hamlett, and Danielle is an efficiency expert, and I have been working with Danielle for the last 6 months or so, and she recommended a book called The 12-Week Year. Here is that book, and I ended up getting that book, and I like what I read, and so I invited Danielle to come on, and we'll talk about that. So that'll be coming up in about 15 minutes or so. My monologue will be on integrity, and I'll tie it in with some Gump movie life lesson, and also it has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about. Danielle and I are going to talk about today. So that'll be the monologue. I also do have a movie life lesson, number 71 from the 94 best scenes and best life lessons from the movie Forrest Gump, and it's titled Lieutenant Dan is a Man of His Word. I'll give you a sneak peek at what that looks like. There it is. Lieutenant Dan is a man of his word. All righty, so that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. So now tomorrow I am going to have Natalie Coleman join me, and I was on Natalie's webcast a couple of weeks ago, and she is someone who has recovered her life after being in a dark place for many years, and so we'll talk about some aspects of recovery and how you go about doing that. And when I was on her show, she had she asked me a couple of great questions that made me think differently about the whole process of me giving up my regular consumption of beer on a daily basis. And so anyway, that's what we'll talk about tomorrow with Natalie, as far as, her aspect of how she views recovery and how it's worked out for her. And one of the great things, and if you watched my show yesterday, which I did not have a guest, it was just a monologue, I talked about my friend, Michael Ty, who was a childhood friend, and him and I reunited about 4 years ago, and then got to see each other 3 years ago, and got to spend a little bit of time last fall. And then he, within just a few weeks after we spent time together, he ended up having surgery and complications from it, and he transitioned into the afterlife. So anyway, but Michael also had a great story of coming alive again after being in a dark place. And so I like this idea that, hey, we can rebirth ourselves at any time, and we can reconnect with our original soul, spirit, and we don't have to live in a dark place with addictions. Alrighty, so that's pretty much what we're going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the movie life lesson right now. And I have a new procedure. I tried this the other day and it didn't work. So let's just see if I am smart enough to make it work today. I am a man of my word. Hi, I'm Steve Weber, and I am a man of my word. I promise to send... I am a man of my word. Hi, I'm Steve Weber, and I am a man of my word. Well, once again, we're having technical difficulties. I haven't figured out how to I'm trying to get these videos to stream in a different way than I had been doing. And I thought I had it figured out, but obviously I didn't. So I'm just going to tell you what happened with that. So anyway, and I'm looking at my phone and getting a message, so I'm doing multiple things at once here. All right, this is why I need to have a producer to handle these things. All righty, so I need to do one thing here temporarily. Let's see. How do I? Let me just take care of some business here. Email. Yeah. Hold on, Brandon. I hear you. So anyway, yeah, I have Brandon Schaefer joining us, but I did send him a message earlier today, but he obviously didn't get that. Let's try it one more time. Sorry about this, folks. A little bit of technical. This is when like I said, I do need to have a producer. So if you are a producer and want to join me, please let me know and we'll make this happen here. All righty. Let's see. I think I can do that. There we go. It's hopefully being sent on the way. The other thing that happens is my computer doesn't like when I'm trying to do, 3 things at once and broadcast here. So I thought I had that all taken care of, but obviously I didn't. So hopefully that's going to arrive and be okay here. All righty. So we will continue with the movie life lesson. And I'm afraid I'm not sure Brandon got this. And so anyway, obviously technical challenges of running a show by yourself. All right. So the movie life lesson, Lieutenant Dan shows up on the dock of the where Forrest is bringing a shrimp boat in, and Forrest gets so excited, he jumps overboard, swims to shore and says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Hey, I am a man of my word. You sent me a letter, and I promised if you ever were a shrimp boat captain, I would come and be your first mate." And it's a cute scene. It's nice because we see Forrest jump off the boat, swim the shore. He's over, he's just super excited about his friend there. His friend who is in a dark place in his life and not very happy, he suddenly seems to be coming back to life a little bit and sharing some of that life with him, even though he still has that rough edge about him. And so anyway, he decides to join Forrest, and that becomes it. And the scene ends when the boat crashes into the dock behind him. And Forrest says, "That's my boat." So anyway, but the thing about this is that he is a man of his word, and he made a promise to Forrest. And of course, it was in the nightclub on New Year's Eve. They were drinking, and it wasn't the type of promise that normally a person would take seriously. And so he basically said, "All right, I'm going to be a man of my word, and I'm going to join you, and that will be it." So anyway, then that's it. He joined up. He showed up, and he said, "Hey, I'm a man of a word. I'm going to be partners," and he was, and he fulfilled on that, even though it wasn't a promise that we would have thought that he would have kept. So anyway, I'm going to figure out that streaming and make that work in the future, and as I said, this morning show, the American Gumption morning show, is a work in progress. We're figuring out how to keep this thing alive and well. But anyway, that's it. So that's our morning best Forrest Gump movie update. If you make a promise, keep your promises. That's it. Simple as that. All righty. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into our next segment. And if it's Tuesday, that means that it's Simple Motivation Day with our friend Brandon Schaefer of Simple Business Help. And let's see if Brandon's ready to go. I see him in the studio. He is ready. So I'm going to play the welcoming theme for Brandon, and then we're going to bring him on board and have him share his wisdom. Brandon, how are you? Our internet is not working as well as I would hope it to be. I see Brandon, but I'm not hearing Brandon at this moment.
Are you here? Are you
Brandon,
here?
how you doing?
Hey.
There I am. I'm here. You're there.
All right.
I hear you loud and clear now. How you doing this morning? Good. We're live on the air, and we're scrambling around, and it's just like real life. You scramble around, you make a plan, you have everything organized, and then you have to adjust. But you keep smiling and you keep doing the best you can, and you don't give up. You just come back and do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, Steve, I absolutely love you, man. You're an inspiration to me, man. You have the dedication, the consistency, the persistency, the insistency to keep moving forward, man. And it's really, really something special. So, but what I want to talk today about is successful exit. So if you're in a business, or if you are, perhaps in a relationship and it comes to an end, like, how do you exit out of that successfully? And that's the important part. Do you leave bitter? Do you leave the person in the relationship on the other side just upset, feeling angry with you? Or do you leave that relationship on with the best foot forward? What do you do? That is the question. And in business, if you lose a sale or someone chooses to go with another company, what do you do? How do you act? Do you help with the transition, with the outbound transition? Or do you say, hey, you're all on your own now? Those are the choices that you have to make. And for me, I always choose to leave with the successful exit. Do I ever want to exit? No. Do I always want to continue in the relationship? 90% of the time. Do I always want to continue in the business relationship? Most likely 100% of the time. So always leave with a successful exit. And that's all I have for today.
Brandon, it's brilliant. I love that. It reminds me of a story when I got to Montana 10 years ago, and I had so many projects going on that I really was overwhelmed with it, and I couldn't handle it. And I had to exit some of those projects. And I remember having a friend who was mentoring me, and she said, and I used the analogy that I had these piles of dirt that needed to be swept up and put into nice piles and cleaned up and put away. So anyway, I love that idea that things don't always work out, but let's clean up our mess and let's leave things in good order so that there's open for future possibility.
Yeah, and Steve, the main reason why I say that is you never know when you close the door when it will be opened back up. And I've had many opportunities that have come back around because somebody said, hey, I don't want to do business with you anymore at this point because we found a better contract or something changed the headquarters. And I help them transition my stuff out and transition the other company in, only to find out that 2 or 3 years later, it didn't have anything to do with me. It had to do with some internal change that they had. Somebody knew somebody, aunts, uncles, brothers, kid, whatever. But through me helping, they found out that it wasn't all about me. It was about the bigger picture, and I ended up picking up the business and growing that business 5-10 times the amount because people were able to rely on me regardless of the situation. They knew that I had their back. So never, ever, ever leave a relationship bitter or anything else like that. Do the successful exit.
Brandon, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, Stevie. Thank you.
Now I'm not sure if my closing song is playing. All right. So that was Brandon Schaefer. We thank Brandon. He's going to come by on Tuesday mornings whenever he's in town and just share a little bit of wisdom, simple motivation from the man behind Simple Business Help. If you need some help with your technology, getting your salespeople to have communication tools that connect with each other, definitely look up Brandon. That's his business. All righty. So thank you, Brandon. I want to move on to the monologue today. And it's about integrity. And I already talked about Lieutenant Dan being a man of his word. As far as the movie goes, integrity for me was always about the voice inside of Forrest's head, and the fact that that voice was consistent with the words that came out of his mouth. In the movie Forrest Gump, they used the voiceover effect quite a bit, and the voiceover effect was all about, Forrest's lips weren't moving, but you could hear his voice, and really what it represented was his thoughts. And the next time you watch the movie, pay attention to that, because what he thinks always matches what comes out of his mouth, what he speaks. What he speaks and what he thinks are in alignment with each other. So that inner voice, that inner being was consistent with the outer being of how he was. And I love that. And, I've had many times in my life where, the inner voice doesn't match the outer voice. And then you're in a mishmash. You're like, you're talking negative thoughts about somebody, or you're saying this will never work out. And then you're putting on the happy face and you're saying the right things, but your inner voice is saying, no, this will never work. And the outer voice is saying, yeah, I think this will work. And so anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Now, it doesn't mean that you want to go around being, a negative, saying exactly every word that comes out of your mouth. But it does mean that if you can get control of those inner voices and those inner things that happen, then maybe you'll have more peace in your life and live. So it's really the conscious and the subconscious, and learning to control that. Another idea is keeping your word, keeping your promises. Of course, that was with Forrest Gump, and that was today's life lesson from the movie. And Lieutenant Dan said he was a man of his word. Forrest Gump's mother taught him a promise is a promise. So, and really it comes down to learning to say no, because we have so many things and so many people that come at us that it really comes down to learning how to prioritize and to say no. And so that's the final aspect of how do you remain integrity. You have to be careful of what you commit to, what you promise, and then how do you prioritize those things that you promise. So our next guest, Danielle Hamlett, is an efficiency expert, and she is that person who is going to talk about that. And we are specifically going to talk about I'm not sure if I'm live. My computer is frozen up here, and this is not a good sign. Let's see here. I'm going to have to do a restart real quick of my, okay. Let's see, force quit. Yeah, boy. Gosh. There we are, Danielle Hamlett. I am not having a great technology morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm glad you're there. I had, I haven't mastered to do a couple of extra things this morning, and the more you stack up on top of it, and then, I tried to, reconnect. And so anyway, I just, my system got overwhelmed and it never seemed to be running at full speed. But anyway, here we are. I had to do a force quit on it and relaunch in. So I'm glad you're there. One of the nice things is that the broadcast stays live, although there's blank air there. So, and I can relog back in. Anyway, we will get more efficient at that as we go along. So deep breath, start over again. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Now, here's the way this works, Danielle. I want to play a special welcoming theme to any and all of my first-time guests who join us here on the American Gumption morning show. But what I'd first like to do is read a little bio intro that I've prepared for you. And then I'll go ahead and do the intro theme. And then it'll be you and I talking the rest of the time. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
All righty. So Danielle Hamlett believes the world needs more producers of positive ideas, messages, and helpful teachings. In everything she does, she strives to enrich others by producing useful, applicable, and practical ways to bring more efficiency into their personal and professional lives. Danielle is an efficiency expert. Her business is Bailiff Consulting, and she specializes in working with organizations of 40 employees or less. She has an expertise in time management, prioritization, process generation, inventory, and execution. Danielle aims to bring practical efficiency to modern chaos. She holds a master's degree in human relations from the University of Oklahoma, a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification, and a graduate certificate of HR diversity and development also from the University of Oklahoma. Danielle Hamlett, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show.
Thank you.
And let me go ahead and play this welcoming. This is the first time theme. So if you're ever a second time guest, you'll never get this again. This is only for the first time you appear on the show. All righty. Have you ever been welcomed to a show with a marching band before, Danielle?
No, I have not. I have, however, played that many times in my marching band career.
So you know then that is the Washington Post March.
Yes.
It was originally written back in the 1880s. I forget the gentleman's name now, but Glenn Miller and his band made it popular. They did that jazz version, and the jazz version that Glenn Miller did was very similar to this the version we just heard. So anyway, I kind of think it's fun, and happy to welcome you here to the American Gumption Show. So,
well, thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
So the reason why I wanted to invite you on is a little bit of a backstory. I'll just share with the audience. Danielle and I have been working together for about six plus months. We've known each other for a little longer than that. But Danielle, again, is like someone who really knows efficiency processes and taking things and systematizing them. And she does a monthly broadcast or podcast webinar, and it's always some kind of an efficiency topic. So I don't remember the topic that you were talking about a few weeks ago, but you recommended this book, The 12-Week Year, and my ears perked up when I heard that 12-week year, because where we met and where we began to work together was in a year-long planning that a mutual friend and consultant friend of ours was leading, and it was talking about a 1-year project and called The One Big Thing. And I remember specifically going through the exercise, and the idea was to take the year, break it into quarters, and then list a bunch of goals and activities for the quarters. Now, I took that pretty serious in that effort to do that. And what I discovered, independent of everything, have no influence on this book at that point, is that I was very capable of planning out 1 quarter, but I was not very good at doing anything beyond that. I could take, like, here's where I want to be in 1 year, but then I couldn't even imagine where I wanted to be in 3 quarters of a year or even a half a year. But I was able to think about what would I want to do in the next quarter, in the next 12 weeks. And I actually made a plan based on week after week. And I went through and I ended up executing on that. And while I didn't accomplish everything exactly as I wanted it, I accomplished most of it. And suddenly I was like a big chunk of the way towards where I wanted to go. But I had no clue, like, what filled in the second quarter and what filled in the third quarter, and even less, like what filled in the fourth quarter. So then when you recommended this book, it resonated with me because I thought I just had the experience of that, exact same process. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Why did you recommend the book to begin with? Just tell us about how you became familiar with Mr. Brian Moran and Michael Lennington, who wrote this book.
Yes, so I have my copy here too. I absolutely love this book for a couple of reasons. One, when I talk to people about efficiency, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business owners, we're all creative in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes what that does is that complicates things. And we become inefficient because we've complicated things. So I was introduced to this book. I think everybody has probably seen it. The authors have been amazing. And just the title, you're like, 12-week year. I even had somebody recommended the book to. They're like, do you mean I can be done working in 12 weeks? I'm like, it's not really what the book is about. But I fully got introduced to this book. I joined a mastermind group in January 7th of 2019. And this is one of the books. This is the first book that they go over. And that we go over and we really pick it apart. So the book is nice and written in and different things like that. But what I love about this book in the efficiency side of it is the authors own an execution company, by the way. So they're CEO and the vice president of the execution company. So, but what I love about this is it gets out of that annual thinking. And even Steve, as you just had said, thinking in quarters, that's even annual thinking. The great news about the 12-week year is you can start it whenever, wherever. It can be November 22nd to whatever 12 weeks later is. And so it doesn't actually have to be, and actually it's recommended we throw out that annual thinking and you don't look at first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. You create your own based on your vision. And that's the next part that I love about this, because in goal setting, we can have goals, but if their goal is not attached emotionally to a larger vision, then what does that goal really mean? Maybe it's a goal for a owner, for a business, for their company, for their boss. Maybe it's a goal that they never created on their own. So what I love about the 12-week year is it talks about, we throw out the annual thinking and we create that aspirational vision. What do we want to do? And then we further break it down. The book helps us further break it down into, what are the goals that you want to achieve in that 12 weeks? And then it further breaks it down to the tactics that you have to complete to reach those goals that lead to that bigger vision. So no matter what you're doing, you're actually online with what you want out of life. Now, the trick about that is you kind of have to know where you're going.
Yeah, that's like always a problem, is like, where do I go? And the beautiful thing about that is that I also felt like I had a pretty clear idea where I wanted to go for the first time in the better part of a decade, where I had this much more clear vision, the American Gumption project. I didn't have any vision of the American Gumption morning show at the time that I started it, but I did have, the project. And so then the morning show just became part of the project, this bigger goal. And I loved what you said. And, we're thinking, we obviously think alike, because my first note was redefining the year, throwing out the annual plan. That is a very important thing. You mentioned it, but go ahead and just say another word or two about how important it is to think in this like 12-week block rather than in the 1 year block.
Right. Well, so the authors do a really great job of highlighting how in the last quarter, that fourth quarter, Gregorian calendar, the fourth quarter of the year, all of a sudden people start hitting goals that they haven't hit in the previous 9 months. Because what happens is when it's January, December seems very far away. When it's February, it still seems pretty far away. By June, July, you're like, oh, I'm halfway through the year. I might want to get down on these goals. Or what most commonly will happen is people will start changing the goal because they don't think they're going to reach it by year end. It's because in January, we're thinking way too far out. And so we can make excuses, whether we know we're doing it or not, to not reach that end goal. And so by July or June, we're reevaluating that goal. We might even reset it. We might change it. And then by the end of the year, people are hitting sales goals. You can ask any company and they're working so hard to meet their goals. So when you throw out the annual plan and you create a 12-week plan, that creates that urgency 4 times in a Gregorian calendar year. Don't let the authors hear me say that, because we don't even really want to talk about the calendar year anymore. But it creates that push, that year-end push that every company has. If you've ever worked in a company, every company has that year-end push. It creates that multiple times, and that is what levels up your ability to reach your goals and complete the tasks that you have inside your plan to meet that larger goal.
So we've committed to a 12-week time block, and then we know what we need to do, and we have pretty big goals for that 12-week time block. And I know because I've done this. Then you go, okay, how am I going to do that? Now it's possible to do like week 1, I need to do this. Week 2, I need to do this. So before you started, you can practically go through and you can block out what the next 12 weeks look like. Whereas when you were back to that yearly thinking, you had no way of like, okay, in February, in March, in June, I need to be doing this. But the whole idea is that you compress this thing and you say, okay, here's where I want to go. Got some pretty big goals. And then week 1, week 2, week 3. And what I found when I did it that way, when I became week focused with this bigger picture, I just was able to focus on that, like that 1 week's worth of goals. And I didn't necessarily have to do it perfect. I just had to get it done. And so like the whole idea of like perfection kind of got thrown out the window, but the getting it done part suddenly felt more urgent. Talk about the 1 week execution.
Yeah. So in 12 weeks, right, each day is a week. So how many bad weeks can you actually have in 12 and expect to reach your goal? So that's really where the measurement piece comes in. So in the 12-week year, they talk about following and measuring your execution of your tasks for your goals. And so each week, as you plan out your week and your activities, you go back through and you measure, did I do it? Did I not do it? And so as you work through your week, 85% or better is your target. To give those of you an idea who have never experienced this book or anything, most people can't even control 50% of their day. So if you are in control 85% on average a week, you are going to take larger strides towards that goal, provided the 3 goals that you choose in the 12-week year are aligned with your larger vision, and that the tactics that you're doing on a daily and weekly basis get you to that goal, that one of those 3 goals. So there's a lot of planning involved in this. And in here, they actually talk about how when you sit down and plan, you actually are increasing your likelihood of completing everything by 20%. And so that weekly plan is so very important to get the tactics on your calendar that are going to make you reach your goal, even though we've got everything else happening. We've got emails, we've got life, we've got school, we could potentially have children, we could potentially have 2 jobs. It doesn't matter, but on your calendar, it needs to be the things that are going to move that needle for you. And then you measure those. Did you do it? Did you not do it? And so, daily, really, daily if you are on track or if you're not. But you can't have more than maybe 1 bad week. I think in executing the 12-week year for the past year and 9 months, you might be able to pull out 2 bad weeks, but you got to be really good.
Yeah.
So it's
I know that we've been, we were talking about this, and we've been working together and holding each other accountable. And I remember you always, like I would come in with a list initially when we began working together. I'd come in with a list of 10 things, to do. And you would say, why don't you just pick 6 things? And I remember that forced me to, narrow my thinking in terms of what is really the most important 6 things? And I can do 10 things, but I'll just add the other 4 on later after I accomplish these first 6 things. So it becomes a matter of prioritization, but it's really that end game. Where do you want to go? You have to know what you want to do, and then you have to plan on how you're going to do that. That's not easy for the average person.
It's not, but I think I want to, encourage people to, a long-term aspirational vision, 10, 15 years down the road, it'll change. So the first long-term aspirational vision that I did when I started the 12-week year program, it's changed a lot. It's almost like, what was I thinking back then? That wasn't big enough. But I hadn't really had the mindset to push through. I hadn't had the mindset. And that's what this 12-week year book, among some other, amazing books that we work with in our mastermind, what it does is it really expounds your mind, and it really allows you to understand that, yes, you can take back control of your day. Yes, you can control 85% of your day. Yes, you can plan it. And yes, in the 12 weeks where you're focusing on only 3 goals, other things will likely get put aside. It's okay. But it's kind of like Steve was saying earlier. It's kind of like you were saying earlier. You said, saying no to good ideas and even great ideas that are not in line with your vision. That's what this will allow you to do, and really focus on creating your best life. And whatever that looks like, if that's a dollar amount, if that's a client amount, if that's an amount that you want to donate, whatever that is, long term, this is going to help you get there.
Danielle, we made a plan at the beginning of the year, or actually, in February timeframe. So it wasn't technically at the beginning of the year. So we started this, and I had the first quarter, and I was going along great, and I did that, and then I I was able to do a second quarter, but it wasn't as focused and it wasn't as big. I didn't like do the same level of big thinking and planning that I had, although I was able to transition into a new phase based on, that first phase and then the second phase. The Gumption morning show suddenly became a reality after I launched my American Gumption website. And that was all part of the plan. And then suddenly I had this new opportunity that, I went, oh my gosh, this could fit in really nicely. I hadn't been planning for this. So I had to do a bit of an adjustment and decide, do I commit to doing this 5 days a week and doing it? So I did. And then what happened at about week 3 of it, I was completely discombobulated in terms of the old original plan, because I now was like thrown into this new doing where day in and day out, I was doing a show. I was busy getting guests lined up. I was learning the interview process. I was doing all these things that I wanted to do as far as the big picture, but now suddenly I was actually doing them. I described it as having real data being put in instead of like kind of, conceptual data. And so my ability to know where I was going long-term suddenly kind of got like scrambled up, and I lost that vision, and I was aware of it and I wanted to regain it, but it took a couple of weeks. And it's only in the last week or two that I finally started to like be able to breathe and feel like, okay, now I have, I understand what's happening in this routine. And I'm beginning to see how all this new data that came in integrates with the old data. Half of that needs to get thrown away, half of the old stuff, because there's new, you can't just put, you can't bring something new in without getting rid of something old. So I had to give up a whole lot of thoughts, but there was a couple week period where I was, kind of like scrambled as far as, well, where do I go with this whole thing? And I was okay with that unease and I acknowledged it, but what do you say to someone who gets into that kind of, mix up when suddenly like a big piece of it, the morning show arrives but then it throws your whole routine out of kilter?
Well, I think our entire world at this point has gone through something like that. Similarly, we have to pivot and reset and replan. And sometimes it'll knock you a little bit back. Ideally, though, the way that I function, when I get really good ideas, see, you and I are a teeny bit different in this aspect. I love the control, right? So when I get these great ideas, I have these sticky notes that I line up. And then those are going to be my next goals for my next 12-week year. So I will pick one up. So if it were me, I would have probably sticky noted the morning show. But you didn't, because you knew it was in line with eventually what you wanted to do. And when the opportunity arises, I think it's a quote by Richard Branson. And he says, if you have a really good opportunity, say yes and learn how to do it later. And something similar to that effect. And I think that that's what you did. So taking some time to realign that vision and then realign the steps that you're currently taking, realign your 6 things to do. I really like the number 6 because on average, a person works about 60% of their day. Mm-hmm. And so when we do a 10 list of things, what happens is that we're actually overshooting. We're thinking that we're going to work 100% of our day. It's not going to happen. So we back that down to 6. We're kind of lowering that expectation, but we're still getting things done, which kind of falls in line really well with this 12-week year concept, because they recommend only 5 to 6 tactics per goal so that you're actually able to finish. But as far as what you're talking about, when things happen that you have to change and you have to pivot, it's a whole lot easier to change and pivot when you're looking more short term than when you're looking 12 months.
Yeah.
So that shorter term look is easier to pivot and change and realign than it is if you were looking farther out to maybe next March. Yeah. Oh, I've got to do this to get to next March.
I think that's right, because if I look at what my original goal was for the 12 months, and then I broke it back into quarters, and then I was able to get that first quarter really dialed in. I mean, I didn't accomplish the entire goal in the first quarter, but it's almost like inevitable that the whole thing was going to be accomplished anyway. And it was what you said, where maybe the goal was too small, like the 12-month goal was too small that way. So if we just take one thing and we shorten up the time frame, I really do see the benefit, and I like that. And now I'm refocusing on a new 12-week goal, because I now have a new set of priorities. And I didn't even know how. There was like a moment where the way I described it is, I had all these new ideas, but I didn't know what I didn't even know what boxes these new ideas fit in. And so I'm more of I need to see the big picture in order to figure out how the details fit in with it. And I'm not so good at just like diving in and doing details and executing them when I don't see how they all line up. So anyway, I want to shift gears a little bit, because one of the things they talk about is intentional imbalance, and it has to do with life-work balance. I have an idea of what it means, but I'm going to just throw this one to you and let you talk about intentional imbalance. And what does that mean?
Oh, that's my favorite thing that I pulled out of this book, is the intentional imbalance. I talk about this a lot, with my clients, because when people think of balance, we either on purpose or inadvertently think it has to be equal, right? So 8 hours here, 8 hours here, 8 hours here. Okay, we're done. Our day is over. And so intentional imbalance, actually, they talk about in the book, if you want extraordinary results, you have to focus an extraordinary amount of time on one specific thing. And so they have a great graph in the book, and let's see if I can find it. They have a great graph in the book about intentional imbalance. But when you have the 3 goals in the 12-week year, and you have the tactics that you're doing to reach those 3 goals in your 12-week year, what's going to happen is other things are going to go by the wayside. Dust might collect, dishes might stack up, but that intentional imbalance is there to make drastic results. And that's just my favorite part about this whole thing. And I actually ran into a lady. I talk about this a lot. I ran into a lady who was like, well, I believe in work-life balance. And I'm like, okay, explain that to me, because I've yet to figure it out. Because like I said, we mentally think balance is equal, and balance can't be equal, because there's only so many times in a day. I did a presentation last night to where some data, it was a 2019 data set, but some data set told us in 2019 that we spend 28% of our day online. Therefore, we have 72% left for the rest of the things. But oh, wait, we have to sleep. So now we have 11 hours. We have 11 hours in our day to get stuff done. And that's going to be the big, that's where that intentional imbalance is going to come in. Because if you're spending your 11 hours that you have left trying to be equal between work, home, family, personal time, and hobbies, it's not going to work. So that intentional imbalance is something that's just a way to really increase what you're doing, because you're laser focusing on just those 3 goals in a short time frame, and you're able to really push through and have great results.
So the way I'm understanding it as it relates to life-work balance is that you may put more energy into a project as far as part of your career for a while. And that means that you're not going to put as much attention and focus into other aspects of your life, your relationships. But at the same time, you can't ignore those. And so you have to you have to have time planned for them too. And so but I think it comes down to, single tasking as opposed to multitasking. Maybe that's really all it comes down to, is that if you just focus on one thing at a time, you'll get that done. And when you're focusing on one thing at a time, acknowledge that you're not focusing on all the other things at that moment in time. I mean, is that really what it is all about?
That really is what it's all about. And it actually kind of brings in another amazing book I recommend, which is The One Thing, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, I think. So that brings in a really good point, but it's about being intentionally focused in one area and not trying to balance all of the areas, because balance is impossible, in my opinion, when you're goal focused and moving forward to something. We just can't even out 11 hours between all the things that we want to do. So we may work really hard 4 days a week, and then we may spend 3 days a week with our family, or 2 days a week with our family and 1 day on a hobby, or whatever the equivalent is. But without a plan and without time blocking, and without knowing the tactics that you're going to need to reach that goal, whether you believe in intentional imbalance or balance, none of it's going to work unless you can execute on a plan. So
talk about what you do and how you work with clients to help them. What, do they come to you when they have a feeling of overwhelm, or do they come to you when they just know that they need better systems? How do they, and I know I mentioned, and you've mentioned it, that you only work with companies 40 employees and smaller. So you're not, you know exactly who your target audience is, and you have other people that you refer clients to if they're or potential clients, if they are too big of a company that way. How do you like to work with organizations? And of course, they can contact you at bailettconsulting.com, which is listed below in the ticker. But how do you, just tell us about the way you work with your clients.
Sure. A lot of my clients come to me because they're frustrated with time. So a lot of what I do starts with time management, whether it's in the owners, whether it's in individuals, whether it's in the employees. So a lot of it starts there. Most people don't know that they don't have good processes, because they don't know what good processes look like or feel like. They have a business, right? So they have a passion for something, and then that passion becomes their business. And so the other parts of a business are very hard to understand how to do. And so what's been going on in our global climate has really shined a light on the ineffectiveness inside businesses. And so most of them come to me frustrated about time management. And then we realize that there is a lack of process. But until you can manage your time to create the process, you can't actually get there. So it's really interesting. There is this pattern of events. It starts with time management, then it'll go into process generation. Likely, if they have inventory, it'll move into there. And all along the way, we're teaching them how to prioritize what's important. I even prioritize process generation based on income producing. So all processes need to be written, but not all processes are created equal. I like to focus on how to get practically efficient right now as fast as possible. And that's going to be in the realm of what processes make you money. Let's write those down. Let's get those defined. Let's get the team on board. They also help with the writing, but let's get the team on board and let's get everybody doing these income producing activities in the same way. So that way we're not worried about managing an email. I had a lady who wanted to, write a process about how all of her employees should manage their email. And I'm like, okay, do you think it would be better if they all knew how to write a quote, make money? And so that's really kind of how that works. And each person, each individual, each business, they're all in a different space. Mm-hmm. So I work to come to them where they are and work with them where they want to go based on their vision. So that's a lot of our talks are going to be, first questions I usually ask are, what's your passion? How do you define success? What's your biggest challenge? And what are your goals for the next 10 years? And that's where we start, and that's where we mold everything to get where they want to go.
Well, that's great. So I do, if you are a small business, 40 employees or less, and you need some help, I recommend that you reach out to Danielle at baylitconsulting.com. And she also has a monthly webinar that she'll give you great tips on, as far as, like, maybe read a book and learn something more. And that's, that's how I ended up learning about this book. And I hadn't really been familiar with the book, but something about the fact that I had gone through that 12-week process of just instinctively knowing that I can plan in 12-week chunks, but I can't plan effectively in 1 year. I can maybe go, okay, in a year I want to be here, and in 5 years I want to be here. But like, as far as any of the tactics or any of the things that need to be done, like in 2.5 years from now, in order to get there, it's just out the window. It doesn't hold. So that whole 12-week year idea shrinks it down. And then, you have 12 weeks, and then you go week 1, week 2, week 3, and you're able to kind of chunk it down and go, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then, as you said, each particular day becomes critical, because if you only have, if you have to get all this done in 1 week, you need to be efficient. The last thing I want to say about it is I was amazed at how much I was able to actually do when I kind of saw that, like, I got to get this done in 1 week. And it allowed me to let go of, like, the perfectionism or the whole idea that, it's got to be really perfect. It just, like, I just needed to get it done. And once you got it done, it was usually, good enough. It's like that 80% of the effort is going to, when you get something done 80% of the way, that last 20% is not going to make any difference in what results from it. So anyway.
Right. And so my webinar series, I actually have another one next week, and it's on time blocking revisited. So I'm going to go more in depth on time blocking, but my webinar series was a birth idea of a 12-week year I had last year. And so I got to work for my last 12-week year of 2019. I worked to write and create the first 6 webinars before 2020 even started. And I knew I would do them monthly. And so it's just really fun. And I wanted to try to confirm this earlier before I did this, but I heard our authors of our favorite book here are looking at redoing this as a 4-week year. So I have a friend of mine who's in a class with them right now that was offered to their company. And so it looks like that they're really, because of what's been going on in our world, they're looking at that, even maybe just like we were talking about how 12 months is too far. They're thinking maybe 12 weeks is too far. And so they're working on dialing it back. And I can't wait to get involved in some of that too.
Well, Danielle Hamlett, thank you for joining us this morning on the American Gumption Morning Show. Any last words of advice to our listeners?
Sure. So there are very few things we can control in our world. And the first one is we can control our thoughts. We can control our actions. We can control our time and how we use that time. So let's start taking back some control, and let's take back control of our time and really get efficient and really just change people's lives and make our world a better place.
All righty. Well, thank you. And if you would benefit from Danielle's expertise or help, please reach out to her at baylitconsulting.com. All right. So thank you, Danielle, for joining us this morning. That's all the time we have. So we'll welcome you back sometime when the authors come up with a 4-week year. How's that sound?
That'd be exciting. Thank you, Steve.
All righty. Take care. All righty. Well, that was Danielle Hamlett of Baylett Consulting. And we just spent a little time talking about the 12-week year. So want to thank Danielle for for that. And that was a fun, lively conversation, and we could have talked much more about it. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to just remind everybody, join us tomorrow, Natalie Coleman, and it'll be a story of recovery. And we'll just keep this American Gumption morning show freight train rolling down the road with technology hiccups or no hiccups. It's gonna succeed one way or the other. So have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.